Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm Suzanne Monroe, founder of the International Association of Wellness Professionals, where I've been teaching people how to live a life of wellness, tap into their passion, and go for their dreams for over 15 years. I believe living well and dreaming big starts with ourselves. This podcast will show you how to create a healthy, holistic life, empower your mindset, follow your dreams, and make a big impact. Let's dive in right now. Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm excited for today's episode, which is called Get Out of Overwhelm and Get Organized. And today we're going to be breaking down how to actually get organized and be effective. And this isn't about being a perfectionist. I mean, some people love being organized, right? Color coding and labels and file folders, and that's great. And it doesn't always come naturally to everyone. But I think we can all find a middle ground and a great way to stay organized in order to be effective. Because really it's about calming the chaos, right? So we can feel grounded and centered and really make the impact that we're here to make. And so that's what we're really talking about today, how to bring organization into your life as a tool to be as effective as you can and to feel grounded and have the most energy every day. I'm joined by my team member, Laura Albers, for this episode, organization and productivity expert, and we're really going to break it all down for you. So let's dive in. Hi, everyone. So excited to be talking with you today about getting organized and ending overwhelm. And I think it's so true that when you become organized, you don't have to feel overwhelmed or crazy busy or just wishing you had more time, right? So that's what we're talking about today, how to really set your day up for success. And it's about making the most of your time and energy. And we're going to give you some tools and ideas that you can use right away to get more organized. I'm joined today with IAWP Master Holistic Wellness Coach, Laura Albers. She's also a mental health therapist, founder of Albers Mind and Body Wellness, and she specializes in all things organization, productivity, all those good things. Hey, Laura, welcome.
Hi, good to be here. Such a great topic.
Well, I'm so excited we're having this chat today because, first of all, I know you love all things organizations. And aren't you one of those people who kind of like geeks out on organization, like color coding, labels, file folders, highlighting? Is that right? Okay.
Yes, Post-it notes. Oh, you're talking my language.
Okay. So I'll say this. You don't have to love organizing as much as Laura does to be organized. Okay. You might be more like me where organization is something you need to do to stay effective, but you don't have, all the Post-it notes and the cute little, paper clips or whatever, and so it can be either, right? You can love it or not love it, but it's really about calming the chaos, I think, and I think that's an important point because some of us love organizing, others don't, but it's not about being perfect. It's about using organization as a tool to be effective so that you can have the most energy every day. So you can stay out of overwhelm. You can not be weighed down. You can feel grounded and really make the impact that you're here to make. So just want to start out with that little point for everybody. And let's talk a little bit about the problem, first of all. Why doesn't organization come naturally to everyone? I mean, why is it so hard to get organized sometimes? Like, even if you love organization, it feels like, okay, there's never enough time, right? And I'll say this, first of all, maybe no one has taught you how to be organized before, right? It's not necessarily something you learned while you were growing up. You didn't develop the habits around it. So some people it comes to naturally, but it's also a skill I think that we can learn. And so that can be a part of it. And I think the other thing is most of us feel better when we're organized to some degree, right? Either things are easier to find, they're in their proper place. We feel we have a routine, right? And we can bring focus to our day. So whatever it is for you, but it does create some initial work and setup, I think, to get things in that place. And we do need to carve out that time because most people are just really busy, right? So we have to kind of plan to organize in a way. What are your thoughts, Laura? I mean, why do people stay stuck when it comes to getting organized in the first place?
Yeah, no, totally. That's such a great question. And I think it is because they don't spend the time to plan or feeling like, as you said, feeling like they don't have that time to plan. But honestly, it ends up taking more time then, because like you said, then you're trying to find, the stuff that you might need, trying to get everything together. So often people just keep adding more, right? They try to be more productive or they, switch from task to task to task. So before you really get into the hustle of all of that, it's so important to get organized. So yeah, I'm really excited that we're talking about this today, Suzanne.
Okay, I love that. Instead of hustling, get organized, right? Because that is kind of the sense. It's like you feel like you're on the hamster wheel of life or whatever. You always feel like you're playing catch up and you're just doing the best you can. It's like, who has time to like organize, right? But yes, there is a better way. That's what we're talking about today. Let's dive into our 3 steps on getting organized, I think. And we're going to cover as it relates to your personal life, in your relationship to others, and also with your career. So we're going to talk about it in all of these aspects, which I'm looking forward to. The first step in the personal area is build blocks and boundaries. So build blocks and boundaries. So build blocks of time, really, which you may have heard me talk about before, but I call them task blocks. And you may have heard of this before from others as well. This is one of those things I think that when it comes to our time can help us get organized, right? It's a foundational step that's going to allow us to have more time. And it's really the big reason I think why people say they don't get organized, because they don't have the time to do it. But if you had more time and were more effective, you could either get organized by cleaning up or clearing your clutter or whatever, or just having more time to do what you love instead of feeling rushed all the time or like you are always playing catch up, right? So the big idea behind task blocks is that, first of all, we all have goals, right? We all have plans, and maybe we even have a big vision. We all have things that we are working toward usually in life. But it can be really hard, I think, to feel like you're working toward those bigger ideas, those bigger rocks, so to speak. And then you can end up feeling like you're spending a lot of time reacting, right? Reacting and responding to things. And we do a lot of stuff that doesn't add up to moving toward those bigger goals. And I think that's where the frustration comes in, because we know in our hearts we have these bigger visions, but it's like we never feel like we can put the time to it. So this is where task blocks come in. And you can set up your day, your week, your month, your year ahead of time with these more purposeful blocks of time when you plan ahead to work on something that is one of these bigger rocks for sure. And that's the activity that's going to move things forward. And it's different than just the to-do list, right? The to-do list is kind of like all the things you sort of have to get done, but they're never usually those bigger things that move things forward. You still will get things done, and you're going to do it in a much more effective way. It doesn't have to take a lot of time to set up task blocks, but it does take being conscious of it and doing it ahead of time. So let's say, for example, you decide every Tuesday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., you're going to focus on writing that book you said you were going to write this year, right? Or you're going to focus on that project that just keeps getting put on the back burner, right? One of the things to keep in mind with task blocks is that we don't have to make the time slot really long, because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't spend an entire day working on this, right? We're like, okay, 9 to 11. And I'm just going to put it in my calendar for next week at this time. And then you have this set time, less than 2 hours usually, maybe even just an hour or 90 minutes, right? Where you actually focus in and get something done. But had you never blocked that out, it kind of gets pushed to the end of the to-do list, and it's the end of the day, and it's like, okay, there it goes tomorrow again, right? Now, I'll just give you an example of how I've been using task blocks lately. I have a big project I'm working on right now. It's a new program coming soon to the IAWP. Very exciting. Lots of amazing pieces to it. Laura knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, my day-to-day is pretty busy, and I found myself getting to my desk in the morning, opening up email, bad habit. Like, even I know I shouldn't be doing it, right? But this happens. And before I know it, my day can be almost over with all the things I might need to respond to, right? And other things I could work on. Now, people will say, well, those things are important too. And yes, they are. But in order to move my project forward, decided to take my own advice, right? Build my task blocks once again. And so 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., I have a task block where I do not look at anything else. And wow, I've gotten so much done. It's so exciting. And good news, I was still able to complete all those other little things, right? But for some reason, if you do the reverse, if you do all the little things first, when you think you're going to get to that big stuff later, it just doesn't happen. Either you don't have the energy to do it, or that block wasn't there and there's not enough time. So something about that reversal really makes things come together. And Laura, I know you like task blocks too. And of course, you have a pretty consistent schedule too, where you like to batch things and stuff like that as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I love what you've shared so far, because I can tell such a difference for myself personally, like before I started doing task blocks and now that I really do that, I'm really, cognizant of doing them and I really honor that time. I just want to mention one other quick time block that I like to set too, which is email time. I call it admin time, but it's really time to respond to like emails, text messages, phone calls, things like that, so that I'm not constantly being bombarded and responding to emails all day long. And I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but I can tell a huge difference. Like you said too, Suzanne, can tell a huge difference the days that I am able to do that and really honor those blocks. So I love that you brought that up. Yeah. And I wanted to share too, like for me, I think, staying organized it's so much for me anyway, about keeping a consistent routine, schedule, and habits. So that I don't really have to think about it. So like for me, some examples, I get up around the same time every morning and then I go right into kind of like my workout. I do like about 5 minutes of gratitude stuff and then I get ready for the day. No matter if I'm, let's say on camera or not, I always get ready for the day. Cause for me, that also helps me just to feel more, I don't know, productive and kind of professional and organized. So that's another thing. And then really having a set time that I like to be at my desk, which I think is hard for many of us who may be working at home, for the first time, maybe. And that can be a little bit challenging, but I like to keep that regular, consistent schedule as I did when I was working outside of the office. So I like to be at my desk between 8:30 and 9. Another thing I like to do is have designated days where I see clients and then designated days that I'm working on my business. And when I'm working on my business, that might be things like, I love to batch. So I like to do, maybe a bunch of social media posts at once, create maybe 4 videos instead of 1 video. So I've got, my content for the whole month. I like to do networking kind of in a batch and maybe send out numerous, networking emails or calls at one time. So there's a lot of things that I really like to do to batch so that I don't really then have to think about it again for another maybe month or several weeks. So, I just think about these things just being part of my routine and habits. And it definitely helps with organization and conserves my energy as well, which is huge.
Yeah. Well, I love that batching things together, right? Because we're talking about blocks, we're talking about batching. And the thing is like, you're not just task blocking those bigger projects. Like I said, you're actually batching everything. So you're batching even the smaller things, the to-do list, right? Because the more that you can kind of put things together, yeah, how effective you respond to all your emails at one time versus like all day long, right? And it's not just about the time, but also what you're saying is that you have more energy too, right? Because you're like doing certain things at one time and it's like it makes it very productive, I think too. So I love that. And then there's kind of the other side of it, which is boundaries, right? Because by saying, hey, I only usually respond to emails, between 2 to 3 or whatever, you're setting some boundaries too. I know you have a lot of thoughts on boundaries too, Laura. What are your thoughts on boundaries? How do they play into this?
Yeah, yeah. So I really think of organization as setting boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And primarily we're talking about setting boundaries around your time. And then the key thing I think is upholding it, of course, but then also communicating those boundaries with your family, friends, clients, like whomever you need to. And I think sometimes that communication piece is missing. And that's where sometimes we tend to struggle. So that is like one specific challenge that I see, like to getting organized. That comes up a lot with my clients, of course, with our coaching students. Like basically not having set work hours, or in the case for our students, it might be set studying hours. So when I say work hours, I'm referring to both. But so they may not have clear set work hours and then clear set non-work or non-study hours. And what I see happening with that then is that there's no real boundary or consistency with that time and with those hours. So what happens is you never feel done for the day, right? Like you're always feeling like you should be doing more, so it makes it really hard to be present, let's say with your family, after quote, after work hours, because then you may be feeling guilty or you're feeling unproductive with your work time, or mentally you're still trying to cross off more things in your head. Like I'd be curious if anyone can, relate to that. And then likewise, when you're working, you can feel guilty because you think you should be with your family, right? And the other thing I see too is that others don't really know when it's okay to, let's say, call you or interrupt you, or they don't know, like I know for me, like my mom used to call a lot, like during the middle of the day, and it'd be like, she would just think, well, you're at home, so of course you can talk right now. And the thing is, I really had to put in those boundaries, not only for myself, but also, communicate that and really uphold that with others around me. So I just feel like bottom line is like setting and communicating consistent, work or study, and then non-work, non-study hours can really help you to be more present and focused, whether you're at work or at play, and it just lets others know to take your work or your study seriously because you take it seriously.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a good point because we're talking about, okay, we have these ideas, these goals, these dreams, these plans. So we're getting organized for ourselves. But like, you're right. Oftentimes we're not sharing that with other people, right? It's so important to communicate that because we're not operating just in a box. There's other people in our lives, which kind of brings us to step 2 of organization, which I call invest in your nest. Because yes, there's going to be everything we do involves other people, whether it's our family, relationships, clients, coworkers, or whatever it is for you. So let's talk a little bit about this because one thing I've noticed is that, I might want to get organized, but it doesn't mean everyone else around me wants to, right? And of course, with families, relationships, everyone's impacting our time, our energy, and our organization, right? We can't force others, but for example, I feel like whenever I get things really organized, like at home, the kitchen's all clean, everything's organized, it's not that much later that it suddenly seems cluttered again. I'm like, wait a second, right? I'm sure people can relate to this. It's like, you can feel like you're constantly managing other people's clutter and stuff, right? So the nest, which could be your home, really needs to get organized and it doesn't have to fall on just one person. So one thing we've done in our house is, we have certain days we kind of clean out and get organized together. And we just focus maybe like on one room or one thing. Like a few weeks ago, we did my son's room. Now, my son is someone who just loves to collect stuff. He has various different collections, whether it's shells or bottle caps, whatever. And, we try to organize our collections, but from time to time, we do need to help him to really decide what needs to stay and what needs to go. So sometimes you have to turn organization, I think, into like a family activity, especially if you have kids. But, that's all like the physical side of organization in terms of living with others. Creating a space, I think, that feels organized and flowing is important, right? Because that feng shui is you feel more grounded. But then, of course, we're also really talking about the time side, right? So there's the space and then there's the time. We also have to invest in our nest in terms of time and quality time, right? But I think with so much on our plates and, of course, so many distractions, including our phones and email, like you said, Laura, we can really start to feel like we aren't really spending quality time with people, right? It's suddenly family time and, people are zoning out or whatever. So Laura, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we get more organized in our relationships so we're not doing all these other things during that time? So we're not just going through the motions every week, but really having that quality time. I think that's huge.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first, I love the invest in your nest. I love that,
Yeah.
that concept. And it's so true though, because it is all about investing in your relationships. Much like you might invest your time or your money into something, this works really the exact same way. So, I feel like a couple ways you can kind of do this is, first of all, write down your most important relationships to you, get really, really clear on those really important relationships. And then ask yourself these questions. First of all, am I investing in my most important relationships? Am I consistently doing this? And I think that's also key. Am I being consistent? And then what are some specific ways that I'm investing? And what are some specific ways that I can continue to invest in this relationship to keep it strong and growing? So it's really good to sort of brainstorm as many kind of ideas as can come to mind. And then really to schedule specific time each week for the quality time and investing in those relationships. Basically, that is that idea of like what doesn't get scheduled or what doesn't get planned doesn't happen. It's kind of that same way. We can have the best intentions, even in our relationships. But as you've said, Suzanne, like life happens. So, maybe what this looks like is you do weekly or monthly date night with your partner, or you go, get ice cream with your son. Even the drive to and from, taking your kids to school, like that can be a time that you make an investment. So it doesn't have to be these huge chunks of time or everything be, like really extravagant or costly or anything like that. It's quality time. It's really investing in that relationship. So really just continually asking yourself, have I made an investment in this relationship today or this week? And again, just keep in mind, these don't have to be big grand gestures or involve any money. It's just that undivided attention and being present in those relationships. So I'm curious kind of what you think about that, Suzanne.
Yeah, I think this being present idea too makes time feel so different, right? Even yesterday, I was sharing, it was my birthday yesterday. And I woke up with this sense of being like, oh, I just kind of want to enjoy every moment today. Like it doesn't have to be like anything huge or whatever. And I remember having this sense of noticing like, oh, just the smallest things, something, my son gave me a hug or just different things that happen. And I just was so in the present because I consciously said, hey, that's how I'm going to do today. And it really stuck with me. Even today, I was like, oh, wow. And the thing is, you don't have to just do it on your birthday. You can have that experience of time any day, right? So how do we consciously bring that energy into what we're doing? And I love what you're saying, Laura. It's like, okay, we schedule these times, but what that is doing is bringing that intention. So like you said, the ride to school could be that intention of, okay, instead of just, driving along, just be there and kind of be present. That's huge when it comes to our time, because really we all feel like there's not enough time. But if we're more present in these moments, time sort of shifts. It feels different. And that's what I experienced.
Yes. Love that.
Yeah. And, I love this question you said too. Have I made an investment in the relationship this week? Like when it comes to being with others, right? I think it's really important to consider because of course, it's easy to just go along in life and in relationships. And then, of course, you wake up one day and people aren't happy with each other or you have resentments or whatever, right? You really want to find out what's important to one another, I think, too. And take the time to do those investments, like you said. And they can be small things. They don't have to be huge, but it's those small things that do add up. Doesn't have to cost a lot of money, doesn't have to take up tons of time, but it's the small things that do bring that meaning. So I know, Laura, too, you have some fun, like little apps and stuff that can help us feel more connected. I'm kind of curious to hear about those.
Yes, 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 yes. So technology can be our friend in some of these cases. So, yeah, just some apps to maybe consider just to stay organized in your relationships. So some ideas, there's an app called Cozy, Cozi, or Simply Us. And both of these apps are really designed to where you can keep like appointments and activities all in one place. You can track, school events and virtual class schedules. You can manage a shared grocery list. You can get the whole family to chip in on chores, and it kind of helps track all of those things. So just to have everything in one place, I feel like can be really, really helpful. So you're not always having to, double check, 3 different calendars, and next thing you know, you're kind of like lost on what's kind of happening around the house. So those two apps can help. There's another app called Happy Couple. And it's an app for couples just wishing to really just strengthen their already existing relationship through friendly gaming. And what's more fun, maybe, than some friendly games with maybe your significant other. So Happy Couple is an app for that. There's also Love Nudge, and that's the fun. It's kind of a habit forming app that helps you really intentionally express love in ways that are most meaningful to your partner. And it's actually based on the book. Probably many people watching or listening are familiar with the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So it's really based on that book and the idea of these 5 love languages. So Love Nudge it can be a fun way to speak to your partner in their own love language. And then lastly, Mint. And so Mint, people may be familiar with that one as well, but it has tools to really help you budget and save more. And it even sorts your spending by category, which I think can be really, really helpful. And it alerts you when you're overspending. It reminds you like how well you're doing on saving, so it can be really helpful because, a lot of times that's one of the main causes of disagreements or tension or fighting or whatever within couples is money. And so really being able to track that together and work on goals financially together can bring a couple together, and as well as help you to feel more organized.
I love it. Well, I mean, we're having more time on our phone these days, but we can at least use it to be organized and invest in our relationships. So that's awesome. And I mean, I think like too, here's where you can task block. Like right now you might be like, oh, let me do all these apps and, get caught up in these apps. No, maybe it's like, this Thursday from 9 to 11, I'm going to check out these apps and I'm going to choose 2 of them to set up or whatever, So I think again, to get organized, you have to kind of plan when are you going to spend your time doing that, which we're going to talk a little about bit in step 3 as we think of organization, because we were talking about getting organized for ourselves within our relationship. And now let's kind of shift our gears a little bit and consider what we do every day, the bigger impact that we might want to be having in the world. And of course, if you're on the path to living well, dreaming big, following your passion and purpose, you want to make sure you're organized so that you can make all that happen. So step 3 is do what you do best. And I'll say this first. It can feel like we have to do everything, right? We wear many hats, especially if we're stepping out in the world and starting our own business, like a coaching business, or even if you're in a high-powered career, there's always a lot of hats to wear, right? There's always more to do. To me, the key is to focus in on what you do best, on what you're really good at, and also what you want to be doing and what you need to be doing, and create a plan from there, right? And just know that other people have different skills, right? And so there's things that they do best and can support you with, right? So to start out, this is kind of where those task blocks again are going to come in. This can really help you to focus in on activities that you really should be doing versus all of the other stuff, because then you start to realize, how much of that other stuff should I actually be doing? Is there anything here that needs to go? Can I outsource this to someone? Can I delegate, right? Is there some technology or support that can help me with things that are really not the best use of my time? So I think sometimes we think, we're the only ones that can get stuff done. I mean, I've been there before, right? I think, okay, I can do it better, faster, and it's going to take more time to explain it to somebody else. So forget it. I'm just going to do it. And that kind of thinking is seriously going to keep you stuck on a professional level, right? Because it's an old way of thinking. It's going to leave us stuck, and it's going to leave us really without support. You don't have to do everything. The new way of thinking is, how can I focus on what I do best so that I can truly share my gifts with the world, right? It's not about running myself ragged and doing everything and being everything to everyone. It's about how I can be most effective so I can share my gifts, right? Because otherwise you're not going to have time to share those gifts if you're too busy with all of the to-dos and the things that you probably shouldn't be doing, or maybe you're just not your own gifts. So I think if you really want to be organized in your work and your career, your coaching practice, the most organized thing you can do is to decide what you're best at, what you're really good at, and how you can spend the most time doing that. And I'll say this, it doesn't happen overnight, right? If you're just starting out, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I have to be doing. Well, let's face it, you're not going to be able to delegate and outsource everything right now, right? And for example, here at the IAWP, I used to wear many hats, right? I still wear several hats, but I used to wear every hat, from marketing to bookkeeping to programming to coaching to everything in between, right? And over the years, our team has grown, and the best gift in the world has been figuring out really what other team members' talents and gifts are, so that they get to do what they do best and helping them to focus in on what they do best, right? So they're really doing the highest, best use of their time, and I'm doing the highest, best use of my time. But this doesn't happen overnight. Right now, I'm in programming and community. Those are my main hats, right? And that falls into several things like podcasting or content creation or leading programs or engaging with the community, and even marketing, right? There's always overlap, but that's the highest, best use of my time. But I didn't get there overnight. It takes time. It's about identifying what it is for you now, knowing that, hey, maybe I am still doing some of these other things, but I know where I'm going. So that's kind of my take on it. Laura, I know you have some really great ideas as well, specifically for coaches or those who are working with clients, really to get organized and get set up successfully so that as they grow, they really have that foundation.
Yes. Yeah. So I love everything that you have said. Yes, for sure. So I've got a couple tips. The first one is really to consider investing in a client management system, or you might hear the word or the letters CMS. And that's really a way to keep organized with your business and particularly with your clients. So it can be kind of an all-in-one program that allows you to enroll clients, keep track of notes, session notes, schedule clients, do your billing and your invoicing. A lot of them now have like a client portal. So the client is able to you're basically able to onboard them, really really like in an organized and kind of seamless way. And so that can really, really save a lot of time. I've actually talked with, several coaches and even therapists that have done a lot of this stuff of client, trying to manage their clients sort of by hand and things like that, or like by using paper and pencil, that kind of stuff. And that can be fine. But what they've always noticed is that things take so much longer and they really feel unorganized in that process. So a client management system can be really helpful for that. And just to give a couple of examples, this list is by no means exhaustive, but Practice Better is a great CMS system. Coach Vantage, Paper Bell, and Healthy are, among many others. So I'd be curious, Suzanne, if you have any thoughts about CMS systems before I kind of go into the next tip.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, I love what you're sharing. I think it's so important to leverage technology for time whenever you can, because I think on one hand, technology has really caused us to feel like we're busier than ever in a way, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's more distractions. But I think obviously, if we can use it for what it's really meant to be, it can be a time saver. We can really harness the power of technology and really free ourselves up. And I so agree, especially when you're starting out, you think, okay, I'll do this later when I'm busier. But the whole idea is to set yourself up for success now so that you have that time and energy to focus on other things. What better way to do it with technology, with setting up a CMS or a CRM or whatever, so that you have that organization. And even if you just have a few clients, you're like, okay, I see how this works. And you're really, what you're doing, what I love, Laura, what you're saying is like, you're creating the space. So when the clients do come, it's there, right? We have to create that space. We have to create that foundation, right? Otherwise there's a void. There's no place for them to go. So it's really an intention to do this.
Yeah. That's such a great point. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I do feel like if you're not organized and sort of have the foundation set, like, how are you going to take in clients, and I'm a true believer, like that kind of energy, you kind of put that out there. So once you really get organized and you set those systems in place, that foundation, I do truly believe, I've also experienced it myself, that really kind of puts out there in the universe, like, okay, universe, like I'm ready to take clients on, I'm ready to build this business. So yeah, I do think it's so important. So that's kind of tip number one with that. And the second thing I'll share regarding kind of setting up your business is really to create a marketing strategy or plan. And I'm such a avid believer in this because, again, I've experienced kind of having no plan, which I can talk a little bit more about. And then when I have had a plan, and just the huge difference that makes. So what I used to do is I was just really unstructured. I was unorganized in my marketing and social media posting, things like that. And basically what I do is I try something because I was told I should, right? Or because I saw someone else do it. So it's like, well, of course I should be doing that too. And I got to say, Suzanne, I'm continuing to work on this. It's sort of a work in progress, but I'm definitely so much more strategic and consistent. So for example, for my social media, I'd like to create 5 key themes that my ideal clients need or have interest in. And then underneath each of those 5 key themes, what I do is I brainstorm as many possible topics or titles that I can think of that fit under that theme. And then what I'll do is I'll have a theme for each day of my social media posting, or I'll have a theme of what I'm going to be writing about in my weekly email newsletter. So the impact of that basically is that I no longer sit and stare at a blank computer screen, not knowing what in the world I should be writing, because now I've got themes, I've got topics, and I've actually created an entire content library now. And that didn't start, of course, as you're saying, it doesn't happen overnight. Like I do that kind of little by little. But now I get excited to, create content and things like that because it feels so organized and I know exactly what I'm doing. So there's no more kind of like that phrase of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. I no longer feel that way. I feel really structured, organized, and consistent. I think that's so huge, especially as you're starting out.
Well, I love that. I'm sure we all have that, you have that moment where you're like, okay, I got to post something today. Like if you're like in that moment, where you're like, I got to do something, like just stop yourself take a step back. Nothing's going to happen if you don't make a post today, but use that time. Maybe you create your task block and you're like, okay, how could I create a calendar? How could I do my social media calendar? How could I plan this out rather than, again, kind of just trying to play catch up here? I love what you've done is you took that step back and you said, okay, where am I going with this? You've done this in so many areas of your business as well. It's like, okay, social media, client management, everything, so that everything starts to have these little mini systems. And that's really what it comes down to. The systems aren't there to keep you totally structured. They're really there to allow for more creativity, more freedom, because it allows you to be organized. And then you get to be a little more playful, I think, too.
Definitely. One of the things I actually love to teach my clients about is my BOSS system or my BOSS method. And Suzanne, I love acronyms. So it stands for Building Organized and Successful Systems. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. It's so important to create that foundation, to be organized, as we're talking about today. I mean, not just in your business, but of course in your relationships with yourself, with your clients, like all of it. And it is a little bit of a time investment in the beginning or on the front end, but it will save you huge amounts of time on the back end. And that just keeps recurring, where it keeps like manifesting even bigger and bigger and bigger, where you're saving even more and more and more time when you're able to do things like this.
Yeah, I love that. That's an awesome system. Yes, the acronyms are always so helpful too. You want to share one caveat to organization, because I think we've shared so much today, so many tips, so many things that people can do. And I think they're all valuable. You could go run out and do all of them now, right? But one caveat I've noticed with organization and with some others, including myself from time to time, is that we can also use organization as procrastination. Okay. So while we want to be organized so we can be effective, we also want to make sure we're not like overly obsessing with organizing and then going so far as wasting time. And then again, not focusing on what matters most, right? Because you could spend all day and the next day and the next day and the next day, like organizing your office, right? Whatever it is. But if you're not focused on what matters most in your business, it won't matter if that office is organized, right? So I come back to this idea. There's a balance here. Use those task blocks. And for wellness coaches specifically, your focus, let's be clear, your focus is being out in front of your ideal coaching clients, educating, sharing the message of wellness and coaching people. And of course, you want to be organized so that when those clients start rolling in, you have that space, you're prepared, right? And the tools that we've talked about today, I think can really help with that. But what matters most is focusing in on the things you need to be doing in your business too. And so make sure you're kind of aware that you could spend all day organizing your office, but then you won't have a coaching practice, right? So get organized to a point, but you don't have to be a perfectionist, right? You don't delay what matters most is what I'm saying here. I think keep that in mind. Use all this to support you, but use the task blocks to say, okay, here's the appropriate time to maybe work with this. You don't have to get it all done at once. How am I focusing? Where am I focusing my time and energy? Keeping that top of mind as well.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is so true. And I experienced that myself too. At one point, I found myself creating a paper to-do list. Then I was using software. I was using Trello to create my basically essentially another to-do list. And then I had like this calendar system that I was using as well. And it was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is first of all taking way too long. And it actually created the fact of being more unorganized, because I had things kind of in all these different places. So I definitely agree. You can get to the point where it can be a procrastination or where it's no longer as helpful. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And I saw some of our live listeners were talking about this as well. We're going to move to our talk back section here in a minute. But I think Eileen was saying, especially working at home, you go down for a cup of coffee or water and all of a sudden you see things are disorganized. Like, should you organize them in that moment? Probably not. She turns a blind eye so she doesn't get distracted, which I love, because sometimes that's what you got to do to be organized and focus on what matters most, right? And Jana was saying something too. She's saying it's funny how cleaning up the house gets interesting when you have something else to do, maybe for your business, right? It's like, okay. So again, you have to have that awareness, like where are you actually putting your time? And again, coming back to when is the right time to do it. let's go to our talk back section now. Hear more from our coaches who are joining us live. I'd love to hear from anyone who's having kind of a breakthrough about something they're going to do different or what you're going to do next. Or maybe you're somebody who struggles with organization. Let us know. We'll take your questions now. All you have to do is raise your hand. And I see Ben is raising his hand. We'll go over to Ben.
Hello, everybody. And thank you again, Suzanne and Laura. It's a whole bunch of nuggets in here. A nugget, first of all, for me, I just wanted to share that as we look at time being our most valuable commodity, something you said earlier, Suzanne, about when you were present on your birthday, how time took on a different meaning for you. And that really jumped out at me, like the whole notion of by being present, we can kind of change our definition of time. So thank you. That's a big takeaway for me. But getting back to like fundamentals for me on task blocks, I don't know if other people are like this, but like setting aside Tuesday morning from 9 to 11 to be creative. Sometimes I'm not in a creative mood. Okay, Thursday from 4 to 6, I'm going to be in min mode. Like sometimes my moodometer doesn't exactly hit what those task blocks say. Are any tips on how to overcome that?
Well, I'll just share this. That is the beauty of being your own boss too, right? Is that you're setting up that structure for yourself ahead of time, but guess what? You can change it, right? So it's not set in stone, but without it, you don't have it. So you can still set it and you get there and you're like, you know what? That's not where the energy is. But guess what? I've set aside a task block here. Where is my energy right now? And instead of, again, doing email or cleaning up the house, I have a task block where I was going to focus on, whatever. Where's my energy? Oh, I do feel creative around this area. How can I use this time? So give yourself that flexibility. But what you've done is you've created this structure to at least fill in with something that is important, is kind of how I think about it. What do you think, Laura?
Yeah, well, I'm going to blank on who said this, but it was a famous writer. Maybe it was Hemingway that said, something about just setting that time every single day to write. And just the act of being consistent with that, like he stopped feeling that writer's block. So he never got writer's block because it was like, okay, this is the time that I write. Even if like nothing really comes to mind or I'm literally writing, I don't know what to write about. It's still getting in that consistent mindset, I guess I'll say. So I think kind of what you're saying too, Suzanne, is I think it's really important to still keep those time blocks. Maybe you don't do the one thing that you had originally thought because you're just not feeling quite in that zone, if you will. But I think it's still important to really keep that time and honor that time. And as you said, Suzanne, use it for something important. And then also one other thing I would share is that think about what helps you to get into that creative space. So for me, I know like one of the things, like I like to go on a short walk after lunch. Like that's actually when I kind of have, a creative burst or whatever. So think about if there's, whether it's maybe journaling or moving or meditating or whatever it might be that you do that maybe puts you into more of a creative space. So that may also be helpful as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Great question. I love what you said there too, Laura, because I think it's kind of like, okay, give yourself the flexibility, as I was saying. But if there's something you're trying to do and you notice that you never are showing up for that task block, then there's probably more to look at there. Like, why are you resisting doing it at all? If you're trying to write a book or whatever it is, like maybe you just have to get going. So yeah, you have to kind of look for yourself and kind of see what it is. But I think you got some options there, Ben. So thanks for the question. Anybody else have something to share or questions? Go ahead, raise your hand right now.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Suzanne. How are you?
Good. Hi, Eileen. How are you?
I'm okay. So one of the things that I found that I'm struggling with, and it's getting better, but I was working in the corporate world for 36 years. And that mindset from 9 to 5 is one that when you become your own boss, now changes into kind of interrupts your day, because you have a mindset that you want to go ahead and you need to get stuff done. And sometimes you have to do the work even after 5 o'clock, but then your body and your brain is like, you need to shut off. And it kind of gets you to the point that you become overwhelmed and you don't want to do the work. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like for me, getting the mindset of the corporate 9 to 5 hours and being able to say, hey, I'm my own boss now. And I need to put in the time, but it's finding that balance between being the own boss and getting out of that corporate mindset.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
You are totally, this totally resonates with me. It really brings me back like all of a sudden to when I first started my own business as well, because I would get to my desk at 9 and I would stop at 5, right? I'd be like, wait a second, 9 to 5, like that's the old way, right?
Yeah.
And so on one hand, sure, that brings that structure. You don't want to have like, no time thing, but the whole point of you going into, not maybe the whole point, but a big part of it is for you to have that freedom and that flexibility to design your own hours. So
Yeah.
I found myself kind of being like a drill master to
Me
like,
too.
okay, you 9 to 5, like,
Yes.
30-minute lunch break. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I still can fall back into those habits too. Right. So
Yes.
I think it's like, okay, again, there's always that middle ground. Where is that balancing point? Like, you may need a couple days where you're like, hey, I'm going totally off the radar because I can. And then I'm sure that's not going to feel totally right either for you, but you allow yourself that. Then you kind of say, okay, what do I want to do? How can I bring in the structure that I want? And maybe it's about setting a task block to just, take an hour to really envision, what do you see your day looking like so that you still move forward with what you want to get done, but you do it from a place of wellness, right? Because
Yes,
that's the
absolutely.
beauty, right? We're not here to like kill ourselves on the path to helping others, right? Like, believe me, I've gone down that road before. I'm like helping others to be well. And here I am, like, I'm a workhorse, right? So like, you've got to say like,
Yes.
what does it look like for you now? And I don't know if you've done that, Eileen, but have you really said, okay, what do I want my days to look like? And how do I bring both parts of myself together, this organized part of myself, along with this part of myself where I want to feel balanced and not totally dead at the end of the day?
Yeah, no, I definitely have been able to take a step back and analyze my days, because it was just getting to the point where it was really overwhelming and nothing was getting done because I just felt overwhelmed. So what happened was, what I did, I started to break up my days, did the task blocks in chunks. So in the mornings, I would target some things, and then I would take 2 hours, maybe in the afternoon, and then go back to run errands and do something. And that helped me to progress much faster. And every Sunday, then I sit down and plan out my week and how that looks like. It helps a little bit, but sometimes even on the weekends, I'm working. It's kind of like a struggle, because it's like I shouldn't be working because it's a weekend. But then I'm like, well, it's my business. I have to do it. So it's kind of like that struggle and pulling yourself back and being mindful and aware that, wait, okay, you're allowed to take this Saturday, but then you're like thinking, wait, I have to do this for the business. I have to do that. It's just a constant struggle for me.
I can so relate to that too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to do, so speaking of kind of that corporate world, because I'm definitely very familiar with that as well. Once I got out of that and I started my own business, I did like a total 360. Like I would only sort of quote show up for my business when I had clients, which at that time were kind of all over the place and kind of random. So I found that I really kind of had some pushback to setting regular hours in the beginning. And I feel like I needed to. I think I just needed to like kind of rinse off, if you will, that corporate mindset just of we're tying our success and getting things done to time rather than to task.
True.
So once I started shifting more to it doesn't really matter how long I'm working as long as I'm getting the most important things done. So for me also, I do organize. I set some time on Sundays. I even call it my setup Sunday. And that's part of what I do is like get ready for the week. And, I might do a few things at my business, but I know that then there's other times during the week where maybe I go meet a friend, friend for lunch, or I knock off at 1 p.m. or whatever the case may be, because for me, it's more about, am I getting the top priority things done versus am I at my desk from 9 to 5 kind of thing. So I don't know if that helps, but
it definitely does, because what I've been doing when I saw myself very overwhelmed, I started doing motivational Mondays.
Ooh, yes.
And motivational Monday is identifying that one big task a week that you need to complete. And that has been very helpful.
Love it. Great idea. Love it.
It sounds like you've set up a lot of things to help you, but yeah, there's still a little bit of a struggle there. It almost sounds kind of mindset. You're like, oh, I have the freedom to work on Saturday, but not Friday. But then I'm in Saturday. I'm like, wait, I shouldn't be, right? So I feel like there's still this push and pull, and I think it is a journey to figuring out. But what do you think is the next step for you, Eileen, to kind of feel maybe a little bit more confident about how you're setting your time up and feeling good about it rather than maybe guilty when you're doing one thing or the other?
I think as I was hearing the conversations going back and forth between you and Laura, I think it's just setting the boundaries and making sure that I just shut off and not feel that I'm missing out or my business is going to suffer because I'm already tackling those big tasks. And I think a lot of it is because I do get sidetracked. Like you said, you look at the phone, you look at the email. So I'm going to put more boundaries on that. And I started this week, actually, I made my schedule. Okay, every morning, 2 hours, I'm doing this, then I'm doing that. And this morning it went up in pieces. And I'm like, okay, why did I check my email? I haven't done my big tasks. So it's kind of like enforcing and coming back to it because I could get easily sidetracked. But I love the fact of putting the task blocks, not looking at my email or my phone, anyone that reaches out to me and making sure that be okay. Because then once the weekend comes in, I won't feel so bad because I tackled what I needed to do. I think that's the next step.
That sounds awesome. That's great. And, I don't know everything about your business or what you're doing now, but I think too, when we first get started, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves about what needs to get done. And maybe there's an element of saying, okay, what do I really want to accomplish this month?
Yeah.
One big thing. And then building those blocks around that and saying, hey, I can see that I'm doing these 2 Saturdays because I'm taking this Friday off to have lunch with a friend or whatever. So when you see that it's already planned ahead because it's built into this one bigger thing that you're accomplishing, you're like, I'm making this choice. Yeah. I chose this versus, oh, I kind of wasted my time during the week and now I really want to work on my bigger thing on Saturday and now I'm feeling right. True. So there's a choice and I want you to come from that empowered place. I think if you take a little step back, do what you said you're going to do and kind of take in everything from today's episode, I'm seeing this coming together for you.
Thank you. I like the fact that you said, look at it as not also from a weekly perspective, but also from a monthly and see what do I need to accomplish this month to help me further. Thank you so much. It's going to come together eventually.
Well, keep us posted. And I think of Eileen because she was featured in the Live Well, Dream Big guidebook.
Oh, yes.
And you told your story in here about how you were in your corporate job and everything that happened to you. Yes. And I'm just reminded of that now because it was such an exciting transition for you and you really are creating the life that you desire.
Yes.
So congratulations to you.
Thank you. I'm actually updating my website with all that information and feature and putting the guide up there just of when people go, because I'm getting on podcasts myself and I'm getting on yours. So I'm really excited to put the message out there and what we learned here at this community, which is fantastic.
Well, congratulations, Eileen. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Guys, it was so fun being with everybody today for this topic about getting organized and putting that on our to-do list, right? So that we feel more grounded, we have more energy, we can go out and make the impact that we want to make, and we can get unstuck. Thanks, Laura, for being here with me. It was a fun conversation.
Thanks so much. Yes, I love all things organization. This was great.
Talk to you soon, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Live Well, Dream Big. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and I want to invite you to take your next step toward living well and dreaming big by downloading the Live Well, Dream Big lifestyle book. It's the ultimate guide to becoming your best self and living life on your own terms. You can grab your complimentary copy by going to the link in the show notes or heading directly to iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide. That's iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide.